So, how do you save thousands of people from an army of these hairy creatures? Apparently have sex. Hello friends, my name is Shayla and today I'm here to give you a book review for a book that my husband recommended to me that happens to have sex magic in it. And I found this really interesting that he was pushing for me to read this series that centers around sex magic. And I love my smutty books, and so I thought, hey, why not? Because he's not a smutty guy. And he's fine with me having my smutty soul, but he himself is not a smutty guy. So why is he pitching me this book about sex magic? So I decided to go ahead and read it. I read it in June, so this is my review for this particular book. This book is called Spellmonger by Terry Mancour. Now, I'm going to give you kind of a description of the book, and then I'm going to get into more of my thoughts about them. So in this book, we're following a man named Minolin. And Minolin used to be what they call a war mage in this particular world. The world is called Calidor. Sorry, I have notes off to the side, so if I glance that way, that's what's going on, just to make sure I'm hitting all the bullet points I want to hit. He lives within the 5 duchies, as it's referred to very regularly within the book. And so he, 6 months ago, basically retired from being a war mage and has come to the little village of Boval. It's on the outskirts of the duchies. He's made friends with Sire Kusi, who is the leader, the local lord, I guess you could say, of Boval, and has settled down. He's found himself a great little assistant in a young man named Tyndall. You know, things are kind of lining up for him, and he's caught the eye of a local widow. So one night he wakes up in the middle of the night and his little paradise is being attacked. So he once again has to become a war mage, essentially, to protect all the things that he cares about. They're being attacked by these little hairy creatures. They're called the Gervani. They're humanoid, but very, very covered in hair, very primal, very animalistic. A lot of them don't really speak, but, you know, they have local shaman, I guess you could say. So kind of like they're spiritual / war leaders, and they're called shaman. And they are the ones that can kind of like communicate with people. So Minolin finds out that they plan to take back their lands from the duchies, and nobody knows why. So that's kind of what this book is about. So let's talk a little bit more about the magic within Spellmonger. So within Spellmonger, magic is very vast. And I know in this first book, we're really only scratching the surface of what the magic is and what it means. I should mention, this series is going to be 30 books long. He's about halfway through writing them, I believe, Terry Mancour is. And this is just the first book. So I know we're going to get a lot more details about the magic system as we go along. But I'll tell you what I know for now. So basically, Minolin was raised by a village, you know, his dad's a baker, his family are bakers, and usually any magical powers that they have are centered around like fire and firing up the kilns for the bakery and things like that. So his is obviously centered around fire, but his was a lot stronger than the average person. So rather than using his talents to just enhance the way the bakery runs and works, he is sent off to the local academy to train and hone his magical powers. And his father's very supportive of this. And through it all, Minolin meets various people. He does have a college girlfriend named Pentandra, or Penny. This is where the sex magic comes in. That is Penny's focus. She really hones that. So the sex magic within this world is actually very like textbook, like very analytical, not sexy or sexual or romantic in any way, shape, or form. It is strictly 2 bodies coming together in the act of sex. There is nothing sexy or romantic about it, really, in the way it's written, and that's okay. This is, you know, adult fantasy. That's not what a lot of people sign up for. This isn't a fantasy romance. And so I didn't know what to expect when my husband just said, read this, I really like it, I think you'll like it too. So I wanted to get that very clear. Anyway, so Penny essentially does play a part in this story because he seeks her out because he needs to get as much strength in Boval as he can. Because Sire Kusi has a secret, and I can't tell you the secret because of spoilers. Essentially, there's a big castle in Boval, and all they do is sell cheese. So how can a village on the outskirts who only sells cheese afford a castle? That's all I'm going to say about that. So basically, he and Penny still have a connection. So he reaches out to her and says, hey, I have access to witch stones, which is this extra source of power within the world of Calidor. And it's basically this like green emerald kind of rock, and it houses a lot of magical power. And so that is what the shamans have been using to do their magic. But Minilin was able to fight off one without it. And he ends up inheriting that, and he basically forms a pact with another species of creature in Calidor, in the surrounding areas of Boval, and they're going together to push back the Gurvani and to keep the duchies safe. So that is essentially what this book is about. Minilin as a character is really interesting. We don't really get a lot of reasons as to why he wants to retire other than he's war tired. And I should mention that Minilin is like in his mid-20s at the beginning of this series. Sometimes with the way things come across, it sounds like he's a lot older than he actually is. But Minilin's a great character. I love Tyndall, his little assistant. Tyndall even makes it so that the local widow who has caught Minilin's eye essentially is basically waiting for him in his bedroom, and they have a thing, and that leads to more, obviously. It's really just, I really enjoy how this whole book came together. Now, I did read this on 2 platforms. I read it through the ebook, which is on Kindle Unlimited if you're interested. And I also listened to the audiobook available through Audible, obviously. And I have to say, I did prefer the audiobook over the ebook because they were inconsistent, but the details fell together better in the audiobook than they did in the physical read for all intents and purposes. And I don't know which one is absolutely the one that Mancor says is the truest, but the one that made the most sense to me was the audiobook. The narrator is John Lee. He does a fantastic job with it. I highly recommend checking out the audiobooks, particularly for this series. So if you're looking for a good audiobook that's a long series that's fun to listen to, highly suggest the Spellmonger series. So how did I feel about this book? I ended up giving this book a solid 4 stars. This is a great start to a fantasy series. I understand why my husband recommended it to me. I can't really give you many more details without spoiling it. I mean, I've alluded to a lot of things, but I don't want to full out spoil people. So I can't really tell you much more about this book. But know that I thoroughly enjoyed my journey with this book. I am so glad that my husband recommended it to me. And I hate that when I went looking on YouTube, there's like one other review for this book. This is an independently published book through Amazon. So if you want to check this out, you can get a physical copy, you can get the ebook, or you can get the audiobook. It's available on all 3 platforms. I know later on in the series, they did officially get picked up by a smaller publisher, but it started out as an indie pubbed series. So I think that's why a lot of people aren't talking about it. Plus the publisher that picked them up is relatively small. So I highly recommend checking out the Spellmonger series if you like adult SFF, adult speculative fiction at all. I think it's worth a try at the very least. Now, when it comes to the story being told, it's a 5, but the actual writing execution for me was a 3, which is why I settled on a 4. Because it's pretty middle of the road writing. It's not extraordinary. It's not flowery prose. So if you don't like flowery prose, you're going to be fine. And it was just, like I said, I enjoyed the audiobook best. I enjoyed it being told to me. I felt that way about The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss as well. I enjoyed listening to that more than actually reading it with my eyes, because these are basically stories being told to you, and the way that they're written, it makes sense to hear them rather than read them with your eyeballs, for me at least. So all in all, I highly recommend checking out the Spellmonger series. I know I've said that a couple times now, but that's because I do. I am continuing on to War Mage as soon as I finish my current audiobook, so look forward to that coming in July as well. If you'd like to see me do reviews for the entirety of the series, let me know in the comments down below and I would be happy to do so. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.